Welcome to Courageous Leadership with Virginia Prodan, training you to lead with courage.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our Courageous Leadership with Virginia Prodan. I am your host, Virginia Prodan. I'm so grateful for your comments and your suggestions and your desire to make sure that you live a life of courage, a life of significance and success. And today we have a very, very special guest that will help us understand what living a life of success and courage and significance means. He is returning to our podcast. His name is Scott Edelman, a foreign service officer, retired, and with the United States Department of State. I have to say that I met Scott many, many years ago in Romania when he started, if I am right, he started his work with the United States Department of State at the Embassy of the United States in Romania, and from there he went to several other places. In fact, I'm just going to read a little bit from your resume, Scott. Mrs. Scott Edelman is retired from the United States Foreign Service Diplomatic Corps within the United States Department of State in 2015, following 35 years of service, largely focused on the Middle East and intelligence analysis. Scott, thank you so very much for returning to our podcast. Please introduce yourself and tell our audience and our viewers everything that you think it's important about your work in the Middle East, your work in the Department of State, and also your work right now as an American citizen, as a Jewish person, everything that you think it's important. We welcome you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be back, and it's always a pleasure to see you. Yes, my involvement in the Middle East goes back even to childhood. I lived in Israel. I was born in New York, but I lived in Israel for a while as a child. This was back in the early 1960s, which dates me a little bit, before the Six-Day War, when it was still a very small, very poor third world country. I went back for a year in college in Jerusalem. That was in 1974, right after the Yom Kippur War of 1973. Professionally within the State Department, I worked in the Intelligence Bureau of the State Department on Middle Eastern issues, particularly Iraq. I was very much involved in the 2010s on work in Iraq. I worked on the Sinai peacekeeping force for a year. Got to know every conceivable type of desert, but also along the border and the road along that parallels the Gaza Strip. I drove every week when I was there for a year. I worked in the Gulf region, 2 assignments. One as the State Department advisor to the Fifth Fleet, which is which is CENTCOM's fleet in the Persian Gulf and Arabian Sea. I was also in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates at the time. This is in the late 1990s, when the very first quiet contacts between the UAE and Israel, which eventually blossomed into the Abraham Accords in the Trump administration. When those very first contacts were taking place, I was aware of those. I was involved in that, including through personal friends. My personal involvement with Israel goes beyond just the professional. To be perfectly candid about it, I have lifelong friends there, going back to childhood, including people that I grew up with in the United States who emigrated to Israel, but also Israelis I've known since childhood. We have close family there. When we hear about the rockets landing on various cities in towns in central Israel, that's where our friends and relatives live. We visit Israel fairly frequently as a family. When we do, we stay with our relatives. We don't stay in hotels. Actually, one of these days, I'd really like to see it as a tourist, as you did when you were there, because I always say when we say we're visiting Israel, and people say, "Oh, how exciting! What did you see?" And I say, "Family." But I also I also am quite familiar with the other side. As I said, I served for a year in Egypt. Um, I do not personally have close Palestinian friends. I do know some Palestinians that I knew in the Gulf or people in Gaza, but we actually have very close friends in Beirut also. And I have to say that when we see the possibility of a war between Israel and Lebanon, if this should, God forbid, expand, we will be thinking of our friends in Beirut also, not just our friends and relatives in Israel. So this is personal, but also professionally. I've studied the Middle East really since professionally since college. So that gives you a little background of why I can speak to this. I follow the news like everyone else. I don't have special access now, but I do have a memory of working closely with the American military 10 years ago when I was in the Gulf, as I said, with the Fifth Fleet. And some of what we see happening in terms of the American support for Israel, the movement of now 2 aircraft carrier groups, which is a huge military deployment, plus aircraft, plus a marine unit, plus others that may be deployed to the area. I recognize, and I will not go into great detail for obvious reasons, but I recognize the off-the-shelf plans that we were already making a decade ago, and that particularly since Israel moved into the CENTCOM area, this is the area of responsibility in the American military for the Middle East. It had previously been differently designated, but in the Trump administration, it moved into CENTCOM. Since then, the coordination, the cooperation, the joint practice, the integration of the American and Israeli forces has been extraordinary. It is not an exaggeration, and it is not a rhetorical point to say that Israel is one of America's closest allies in the world, not just in the Middle East, but in the world. So, speaking about current events, there was an Israeli prime minister a few years ago who famously said to an American audience that we share America's values. Unfortunately, we don't share America's neighborhood. Israel is in a very, very dangerous neighborhood. The Middle East is not North America. As you know, just over, actually, it is 10 days ago, Israel suffered a huge blow with what is being described sometimes as Israel's 9/11, but in some ways it has an even greater impact. It was for the United States, we're a country of 330 million, and we lost about 3,000 people in the 9/11 attacks, most of whom were killed all at once, although, of course, there have been casualties since from the first responders who suffered from the toxic environment after the explosions. In Israel, it's a country of just under 10 million. It is not the tiny third world country I once lived in. It is at approximately 10 million. It is at the low end, the equivalent low end of a middle-sized European country. That's the equivalent population of Sweden or Hungary, to give you a sense of the size of the country. But nonetheless, to lose roughly 1,500 people all at once is a huge blow. Almost every family in Israel, if they didn't know somebody personally, they know somebody who knows somebody who was killed. You've seen pictures of the people who were killed. In some ways, it also illustrates what a diverse society Israel is, because it wasn't just Jews. It was Israeli Arabs. It was Filipinos who were working as nurses and hospital assistants. It was a Thai agronomist who was studying agricultural methods, and Thai workers. It was Arab ambulance drivers and Arab doctors who were rushing to try to help people, who were all murdered on that day. So the atrocity represents the fact that one of the things that unites the United States and Israel is that, while we are different countries, one is much larger than the other. We are both modern democracies. We are both diverse societies, and that's one of the reasons why this is not just Israel that's being targeted. As far as where things stand right now, Israel, of course, has not as President Biden has put it, and he's been very blunt, and it has to be said, talking as I do almost every day on the telephone with friends and relatives in Israel. We were very close contact with them. His words were very much appreciated in Israel. It was at 2 in the afternoon in the United States. That was 9 p.m. prime time in Israel that Biden made his statement. It was live. It was viewed by virtually everyone in the country. And I have to say that they deeply appreciated his understanding of what the impact of this was. And as he said, Israel has not just a right, but an obligation to defend itself against this kind of monstrosity. It is not an exaggeration. You know, you and I have discussed privately how rhetoric in the United States sometimes gets a little out of control, and people, particularly on the left of the spectrum, tend to use words like racist and fascist and Nazi and what have you, a little bit in a way that kind of cheapens it too often for people they simply disagree with. It is not an exaggeration to say that Hamas, the organization that staged this, are Nazis. They speak Arabic instead of German, but their basic ideology, proclaimed in their founding charter and frequently repeated in public, is the murder not just of Israelis, the murder of every Jew on the planet. That is their objective. That is what they exist to do. Israel cannot tolerate that. And frankly, the United States and the world cannot tolerate that. It's another reason why Israelis are deeply appreciative. Not only that President Biden is going to be there tomorrow, but President Macron from France is flying to Israel. Prime Minister Sunak from Great Britain is planning to fly to Israel. Europeans, the rest of the world is also recognizing what a threat this is. How will Israel deal with this? Okay. Like the United States, Israel is, as a modern democracy, is also going through a period, or was up until a week and a half ago, when it was deeply politically divided. And there was a lot of very nasty rhetoric from left and right in Israel. It's a country where politics is discussed just as intensely, if not more so, than in the United States. That ended 10 days ago. The country now is united left to right in its determination that this organization can no longer be allowed to exist. The difference, of course, and we are going to see a lot of, Israel is already bombing Gaza. It has asked civilians to leave the northern part of the Gaza Strip in order to clear the way for operations. There will be collateral damage. There will be civilian casualties. People will die, and it will be tragic. Objectives matter. Israel's objective is not to kill or harm civilians. In fact, what they're doing is everything that is possible, given the limited circumstances and the way that urban warfare it takes place. They're doing everything possible to separate the population from Hamas, at the same time that Hamas is desperately trying to keep the population as human shields, along with the hostages that they took. And again, this reflects the diversity of Israeli society. The hostages include American hostages, French hostages. There was a hostage video that was finally released today, and it was a French citizen. There are other foreign hostages as well. So as one writer put it recently, and I think it was very good, the difference between war as tragedy and war as barbarism is that the Israelis, like the United States, the Israeli military, just like the American military, has strict rules of conduct. We do follow the laws of war, just like the Israelis do. In fact, when I was at CENTCOM, I recall joint training that we did with the Israelis. American military, Israeli military, legal experts on the laws of war and how we conduct what is referred to as just war theory. And it is parallel. It was a genuine exchange of experiences between militaries that think the same way. So Israel will be attacking in Gaza. The objective will be to eliminate Hamas. The great concern that everyone has, the Israelis, the United States, one of the reasons we sent the aircraft carriers, in addition to helping in this operation, but also why the president is going there, is we are deeply concerned that this war not spread. There is a broader regional context to what's taking place. Israel, as you know, through the Abraham Accords and the Arab Gulf states, were building a new structure of security and peace and prosperity in the region. Israel and Saudi Arabia were on the verge of mutual recognition and normalization. This was not because the Arabs in the Gulf suddenly woke up one morning and said, "Oh, we were wrong. The Jews are really nice people after all." It was because a new generation of young Arab leaders in the Gulf region particularly, are anxious to join the West and to join the prosperity of the West. And Israel is the Western, modern, prosperous country in the region. It is, again, you visited there. It is like the United States in that sense. I think one of the not to speak for other people, I think one of the reasons for the connection is so many American tourists visit Israel, very often Christian tourists on pilgrimage, and what they discover is not just the sources of the places that they learned about in the Bible, seeing it physically, but they also meet Israeli people and they realize they're like us. This is a modern country, just like America, with the same ambitions and the same outlook and the same way of living. And these are people who want to live in peace and prosperity. And the Arab young Arab leaders who are signing agreements with Israel have the same ambitions for their people. Opposed to them is Iran. Iran is led, as you know, by a fanatically anti-American, openly genocidal dictatorship. It has aligned itself with Russia in the war in Ukraine. It's supplying Russia with weapons to fight Ukrainians and commit atrocities in Ukraine as well. This is not just in Israel. This has happened. With China, with North Korea. These are the countries that stand opposed to the idea of a prosperous, open Middle East, and one where, even though in the Arab countries democracy is still a far off ambition, someday it may even lead to that, but at least a Western-oriented, prosperous region. That's one of the reasons we're so concerned to keep this from expanding, because we know that there is great danger if the Iranians decide that they're going to order Lebanese Hezbollah, which is the organization they most closely control, to enter into the fighting as well. You look like you have a question.
You are so right about the way the Israeli people and Israeli government works. It's a proof that they wanted so much to establish a good relationship with their neighbors. They even this year, if I'm correct, they gave 20,000 work visa to those people, who later on they prove that being there in their country, they turn their arms against them. While they were there, they were creating maps and all kind of things to make sure that when the invasion comes, they will know exactly. And it's said that the majority of the places that were targeted were people, young people and families.
Yeah. Well, as far as the targets, first, we know several hundred people were at a music festival. The attack took place on what in Israel was a 3-day holiday weekend. It's that's why there was a big music festival in the area. It was not by any means the largest music festival in Israel that weekend because it was a 3-day weekend. Actually, the largest that was planned was for that evening in Tel Aviv. Bruno Mars, which I'm afraid I'm a little too old to know exactly who that is, but some of the audience will know. That was supposed to be it got canceled at the last minute. They deliberately attacked the music festival. They shot people. That's why I say the metaphor with Nazis. It's not even a metaphor. They are Nazis. This is what the Nazis did.
Well, I will go a step further. And I will say it what somebody said on television on both, liberal and conservative. That person said they are worse than Nazi because Nazi killed Jewish but try really hard to hide their actions.
Yes.
These people, Hamas people, took their phone and they filmed their atrocious acts and they put on social media for everyone. They boasted and they even right now try to put those things. Of course, you hear people even in America or other places where they want to deny that, no, nothing like this happened. But we all had seen that.
Yeah. No, in the Second World War, when the American troops liberated one of the Nazi death camps, Buchenwald, General Eisenhower went in person to see it and ordered that American military photographers and cameramen come and film and document what was there because he said, I don't want people a generation from now saying it never happened. There's proof that it happened. The Israelis are well aware of that. The Israeli Forensic Center is not just working to identify all the bodies, because one of the reasons the casualty figures keep going up is they keep identifying new bodies as they find them. But and many of the bodies are burnt beyond recognition, so they're doing this with DNA tests and so forth. But they're also carefully documenting this that can never be denied what happens.
Are those information available to us on the Israeli website or something to send those people that will say it never happened to send them there? Can you?
I understand that the Prime Minister's website has a link to documentation of this.
Okay.
No, this is being carefully documented so that it can never be denied.
Yeah. Yeah. If
and,
I'm correct,
and it includes, again, not to go into all the details of the gruesome details of this, but in villages they would go into. They found families that had been tied with wire before being burned alive. There's one couple that they didn't actually get to, who were in hospital now, gravely injured, which is one reason why some of the casualty figures will keep going up, because people have severe injuries. They're burnt severely on the backs and on the arms and on the legs, and not on the front, because they held each other together with their baby in between them to protect the baby. And this is the mind boggles at what happened. Again, there will be casualties on the Palestinian side also. We will see pictures of children who died in bombings. It will happen. The Israelis are doing everything possible to limit that. That's the whole point of getting people out of the area as much as they can. They know they're not going to get everyone out. They know that it creates a humanitarian crisis. They are working to try to figure out how to provide for the people that have fled to the south. They know that Hamas is trying desperately to keep people from fleeing.
Yes,
but
to use them like a human shield.
Yeah.
To use them. But let me ask you, Scott, I heard that 60,000 Israelis were misplaced because up on north, they have to leave their towns because there is a danger, and even they had, and you have so many people, that they have to go with all they have on their back. Where is the cry of people about, humanitarian help for Israel?
Well, that's a question. It's hard to answer. No, just as Gazans are being told to evacuate the area, the Israelis have declared a closed military zone and evacuated all of the villages and towns around Gaza, and also in the north, because there is a very real concern that Lebanese Hezbollah will be involved. And not to minimize any of that, the Lebanese Hezbollah, Hamas is vicious, but it does not by itself have the power to destroy Israel. Hezbollah is a much larger, much more lethal, much more professional force with far better weaponry than Hamas has. Again, this is the reason why we have practiced with the Israelis, and why there is this off-the-shelf plan to coordinate with Israel. If Hezbollah gets involved, the United States will be participating, not necessarily with boots on the ground, but there are many other ways that we can participate to see to it to try to minimize this, because we know that Hezbollah is a modern military force, unlike Hamas. And
yes, and they want the death of all Jewish, but they also said many times death to America.
Yeah, Hezbollah has attacked Americans in the past. Hezbollah operates, has a worldwide operation, including in Latin America. Hezbollah has attacked in Argentina, for example, before. This is, as I said, not just in Washington, but in European capitals. There is an understanding that this is not just Israel. This is an attack on the West in general, with Israel simply being the tip of the spear, if you will, because it happens to be the Western country that's in the Middle East.
So my question is next America?
Obviously, we hope not, but it is quite possible and probably likely that there will be terrorist attacks in America. It doesn't take very many people. As they said, 9/11 was 19 known, maybe 20 terrorists. That's not a whole lot. We know that there are hundreds of thousands, well, there are actually millions of undocumented people in the United States, especially the 8 million plus who've entered in the United States in just the last 2 years through the southern border. We have no idea who many of these people are. We do know that even when people have been encountered at the border, that there's a large number of people who've come not just from South America and Central America, but also from countries throughout the world, including in the Middle East. And we have no idea who the people, the so-called gotaways, are, the ones that we have not encountered. So it defies reason to suggest that there are not cells of Hezbollah in the United States. Iran refers to Israel as the little Satan, but it refers to America as the great Satan. We are their primary objective. Israel is the country which is our closest ally, which stands in the way. So yes, there is a danger. And as they always say with terrorism, unfortunately, we have to be right all the time in catching people. They only have to be successful once to cause a great deal of damage. So yes, unfortunately, that is a problem.
Talking about this, we are grateful for what the American government is doing. We hope they will continue to stay strong and support Israel and the entire civilization. And but for us individuals, what can we do? during this time?
Well, first of all, staying informed and informing others and letting people know what is taking place, and that and keeping alive the memory of what happened. In terms of actual contributions, I don't have any connection with any particular charity or what have you. I
Oh,
know that
I have to tell you that Fox News, I'm not aware of anyone, but Fox News, I
yes,
believe right after October 7, they put on their screen and they talk all the time that
yes,
you can donate to a specific place
yes,
there,
that's
and they have
UJA.
it online and is for Israeli people.
Yeah.
So, but
So
I
I
know
would say
there
that
might be others.
what comes to mind immediately, and again, I can send you the websites later if you wish. Um, Fox News has made a $1 million contribution to the UJA, the United Jewish Appeal, which is the American Jewish version of the United Way. An umbrella organization that covers a wide variety of charities. And I know that every evening on Fox News, they have at the bottom of the screen how you can make contributions to the Israel Emergency Fund of the UJA. More specifically, um, the Israeli version of the Red Cross is in Hebrew, it's called Magen David Adom, the Red Star of David, or MDA. There is an organization, it is a tax deductible charitable organization in the United States, American Friends of the MDA. And there's a website for American Friends of the MDA. Um, they Contributions to them go to purchase ambulances, medical supplies, other supplies that are going to be needed to deal with casualties in Israel, and assist with medicine and other medical supplies. Um, for people who want to make a contribution, of course, there's no need to, and it wouldn't be legal to make lethal contributions to the Israeli forces. But there is a parallel organization called American Friends of the IDF, and that also is a charitable organization because they provide not lethal aid, but they provide comfort aid, if you will, to soldiers in the Israeli armed forces. Things like extra clothing, extra supplies for, if you will, I wouldn't, entertainment's not the right word for it, but recreation, what have you. Things that non-lethal assistance that helps with morale. That's American Friends of the IDF. So those are the organizations that immediately come to mind. There are others um, that have specific missions, but I would say if not the UJA, then certainly, especially if you want to help directly, American Friends of the MDA, the Magen David Adom, which is it's an easy website to get to, and it is an American registered charitable website.
That's great. I hope that everybody took notes. If not, they will and go there and donate. I will also say we also pray for the peace of Jerusalem. That's what the Bible tells us, and we also I will also invite people to check on their Jewish people, just to let them know that they are praying if they ask for help or something. Under those situations, many of them, instead of letting their own kids to drive the car to school, they prefer to drive them to school. So if parents don't have time or they're at work, make sure that if you have time, you can drive them, you can pick them up and show them love. That's all. And I know that there are many other ways to help, but as we go through all this situation, we will learn the best way to show love, to show understanding, and like you said, never stop sharing the truth, because we already have seen some fake news, but I assume that those fake news will come even more, available as the attack on Gaza will come to destroy this evil. So, anything else that you want to share with our audience?
I think that pretty much covers it. It's true. Anyone reaching out is it's always very much appreciated. Of course, for us in America, we're safe here. Obviously, this is our country too. Um, uh, but um, but I will say that hearing from friends, just expressions of concern, is welcome. Many American Jews, like myself, do have personal connections, family or friends in Israel, and we are deeply concerned for them. And they also have appreciated just our reaching out to them and being in regular touch with them. For average Israelis right now, this is a difficult time. Calling up in a country of less than 10 million people, calling up 400,000 reservists into the army means that much of the country is shut down at the moment. For The Hamas rockets reach much of central Israel. Hezbollah rockets could reach all of Israel, unfortunately, if God forbid they should get involved. Um, I was talking with one old friend of mine. Actually, interestingly enough, I met him in Romania. He was the Israeli airline representative at Otopen Airport when back when we were there. We've stayed very close friends since then. And as he said, he's my age, so it's tempting to stay at home, but he said he doesn't want to. He will go out and walking the dog, but he has to keep an eye on where the air raid shelters are, because when the alarm goes off, you've got basically a minute to dash into the nearest air raid shelter. Even Secretary of State Blinken had to run into an air raid shelter the other day.
Yes.
We hope that the president's visit goes without him having to dash into an air raid shelter, but it's a very it's a very hard experience just living in a country at war. But the one thing that this has done, even more than 9/11 did in the United States, and I think even more lastingly, is it was a wake up call for everyone in the country. All of the political arguments have been put on hold. They will come back. Have no doubt about it. When there were arguments, and you would see in the American press someone would say, "Oh, there's a danger to Israeli democracy." I always said, "You've got to be kidding me." This is a country under normal circumstances, famously, where public opinion polls consistently come up with 0% in the column for no opinion. It is a country that is wildly open and free and democratic. But all those debates have been put to the side right now. There is almost full national unanimity that they cannot tolerate the existence of an organization dedicated to the murder of everyone in the country. And again, it's not even just Jewish Israelis, Arab Israelis also, by and large. There will be exceptions. There will be a few who will demonstrate and what have you. But even most Arab Israelis have also said, this is our country too, and we are going to defend it against this evil. And they have been deeply appreciative, I have to say. Politically, I'm not a great fan of President Biden, but I have to say I have really been impressed talking to my friends and family in Israel, how deeply they appreciate the fact that he has made it absolutely clear. And I think that this has also been a wake-up call for people in America, that this is not a question of degree or should we or shouldn't we. This is good versus evil. And the people, it's not rocket science to say the people who chop heads off babies are the bad guys. That is what evil looks like. And I know that Israel and the United States and our other allies, the British have also, the Royal Navy sent a ship to support. We will eventually triumph over evil.
Yes, and I believe, like it says all over places, in Israel and the primary minister said they started the war. Israel didn't look for this war, but they will finish. And we also believe that God, who created Israel people, who gave them that land, will fight for them. The Bible says that Jewish people are the apple of his eyes. They are chosen people. So to me, it looks like these people, Hamas and Iran and others, are fighting first with God and second with Israeli people because they are God's people. And there is no way for them to win. That is my conviction. That's what I believe, and that's what I ask God to do it. He's the King of Kings, Lord of Lords. He is above all the nations, and he is a just God. He doesn't like violence. And if the Hamas believe that and they brag about what they did, they should be very aware of what is coming. We don't know when, but it's coming. We believe that the God of Jacob, Joseph, Daniel, David is the God of justice, and he will apply that justice. So we are praying for you. We are praying for people of Israel, and we are grateful and confident that God will show all of us his justice. Thank you so very much, Scott, again, for coming to our podcast. We hope to bring you back, and we hope when we bring you back, it's going to be peace. Everything is going to be resolved. But until next time, I just want to thank you so much.
If I may, just one parting thought. When what you were saying reminds me, and unfortunately, it's in Hebrew, so not everyone would understand. When I was a child in Israel, there was a very popular song. It dates back to the 1950s. It's called in Hebrew "Machar," meaning tomorrow. And what I loved about it as a child, and I still was listening to it today, it promises that there will be peace. And the closing words of the song are, "This is as sure as the sunshine of noon, and it will happen today. And if not today, then tomorrow, and if not tomorrow, then the day after. But it will happen."
Yes, I agree with you. And I want to share with you, I don't know if you know, but in Romania, under socialists and communists, and I believe even now, we use the anthem of Israel as a Christian song. And on that song, we said, "Lord, you are with us in trouble, and we are always winning as we remain under your wings." It's something similar to Psalm 91. So this is our prayer for Israel, for people in all over the world, Jewish people. They are God's creation. Hamas are God's creation, but they have to turn to God. They just cannot do horrible things. God doesn't like violence. But until next time, we just want to thank you so very much for coming here. And we hope and pray and wait for the Lord, how to guide the government and how to guide everybody around so the victory will show up. If not, like you said, today, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, but it will show up. Thank you so very much again.
Thank you.
If you want to know more about Virginia Prodan, her coaching program, buy her book, Saving My Assassin, or invite Virginia to speak at your events, visit virginiaprodanbooks.com.